What's up, y'all? So we're here at it for another little mini lesson for FreeCodeCamp, responsive web design, basic CSS, and the lesson today is add borders around your elements. All right, so we're gonna break this down in three parts. We're gonna go over the overview, make sure we know what we're getting into. We're gonna jump into the solution, and then if there's anything that comes up in the back of my mind as I'm going through this, I'll save it for the end as bonus content. So let's get started. All right, let's read through this. Add borders around your elements. CSS borders have properties like style, color, and width. For example, if we wanted to create a red 5-pixel border around an HTML element, we could use this class. I'm going to make this bigger so we can see it. So we have a class, we have border color is red, border width is 5 pixels, and border style is solid. Create a class, this is the directions, create a class called thick green border. This class should add a 10 pixel solid green border around an HTML element. Apply the class to your cat photo, this cat right here. Remember that you can apply multiple classes to an element using its class attribute by separating each class name with a space. For example, in the image tag, we could say class 1 and class 2. All right, so that's the overview. So just as a recap, we want to add a green border around this cat photo. We're going to be creating a new class. We're not going to be modifying an existing class. And we're going to be adding that class to the image element. All right, so let's get started and jump into the solution. Now, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so we can see our code. All right, and so this step I'm doing right now is not affecting anything other than just making what I would consider to be a more readable way to view this image element. Okay. All right, I could probably make this even smaller and even smaller. All right, cool. So here we have our image element, and we can see it has a class attribute, a source attribute, that's the image, and an alternate text attribute. And so we want to add this new class to the cat photo, but we need to create it first. All right, so the name of the class that they want us to create is thick green border. Okay, and we know we're creating a class, and we're not just selecting like an image element because we're starting with dot. That means it's a class. All right, we're going to create these opening and closing brackets, and then everything inside of here is part of that class. Okay, so we have border style, border color, and border size. All right, so for the border style, we were told to say that we're going to call this solid. For the border color, we're going to call this green. And for the border size, we're going to call this, I don't think this needs to be in quotes, 10 pixels. I may have misused quotes there. All right. Border style, border color, and border size. Now we have the class created, and we know where our image element is. Now, in order to connect these two, to connect the dots, we have two dots, we just need to wire them together. And the wire that's connecting our class to our HTML element is this class thing right here. So what is it called? Thick green border. And it appears. Great. All right, so we've got what I believe is a solution. So I'm going to expand this back, and we're going to run the tests to see if we're there. Run tests, and we have a failing test. Your image should have a border width of 10 pixels. I just called it border size, not border width. There we go. That's a much larger border. All right, cool. Let's run the test again. Bam. And we have passed the test. Great. So that's pretty cool. Now we're going to go ahead and move into bonus content. There's a lot of fun stuff around what we've just learned. And so they gave us this launch code lesson gave us just the general, like a general class we could make called thin or thick green border. And so what are the other things you can do with borders? So I want to pull up a resource that if you're not familiar with, you probably will be, and that's W3 schools. And we're going to say CSS border in our search. CSS borders, W3 school. Okay. And so yeah, here we go. So if you remember, the border style here was solid. So what are the other options? We have a really nice list on W3 schools. We can see a dotted border, dashed, solid, a double, a grooved border, a ridge border, inset, outset, no border, a hidden border, and a mixed border, which they're probably just assigning a border style for each side of the border. For border width, that's pretty self-explanatory. I believe you just kind of set how many pixels wide the border is going to be, and that's going to affect all the different border styles that you choose. Border color is pretty self-explanatory. Now, border sides, you can select one side, like one specific side of like an element, and apply a border to that. So, for example, if we said border style left, is that how they did it? Let's see. Oh, I did it in the wrong order. Left goes before the word style. Left. Now we're saying that the only solid border here is on the left. And I could also say border right style solid. And that puts it on both sides. Cool. And then the last thing I wanted to show you, and this may come up in a future lesson, but this is bonus content, so we can do whatever we want, is a different way to do a border. And so we are going to, I'm going to get rid of these border styles. Yeah, we'll just get rid of them all together. And so that makes the border disappear. Even though we're telling the border that it's green and that its width is 10 pixels, if we don't tell it what style it is, it's not going to render it. So there is something, I believe it's called box shadow, and we're just going to CSS box shadow. Yep, that's right, box shadow. And so this is interesting because they basically stack all the different options in this example all after box shadow. So I'll show you what that looks like. Box shadow, and we're going to say 0 pixels by 0 pixels by 0 pixels, and then the color, we're going to call it green. All right, so right now nothing's showing up. This first value here, this is how much the box shadow goes right. And if I did -10, it's going to be on the other side. And this one is how much it goes up or down. Okay, so right there we kind of have like a drop shadow here. Now it has rigid edges, and so if we wanted to make them fuzzy, we can say how much to soften the edges. So we could say like 5 pixels, right? Or you can even say something crazy like 50 pixels. And so here we have like this sort of like soft background behind this. And for some designs, you can combine, you may find yourself in a position where you want to combine a border with a drop shadow to get a specific effect. So we're going to call this black. Okay. And then for the border style, we're going to make this only 1 pixel. We're going to make this white. And then we're going to say border style is solid. And so there, let's make this 20. And we're gonna keep these at 0, so it's perfectly centered. And let's say gray. Okay, so that's just something I came up with for this image. It doesn't quite match the app because the app is like it's very, very colorful, and this is more of like a subdued kind of a styling. But it's just an example of how you can use these things in CSS. And one way I figure out how to do things like I want that I like is I'll find an example online or like on CodePen or something that I like, and I'll copy it over into my code, and then I'll just remove bits and pieces of it and mess around with it until it's something that I like. And it can be a good opportunity to learn and do cool things. So that wraps it up for this lesson. This was add borders around your elements, basic CSS, responsive web design,